return to the classics. And now for my next number, I'd like to return to the classics.
Uno, two, tres, four.
Staff as a weapon has always been great in larger scale fights because it has tons of AoE damage while evading, but it's never been great in small scale or roaming situations because it doesn't have access to easy stealth, so it can't really synergize too well with the Thief's kit, and disengage is not really a good option for it, and that doesn't really fit the main Thief playstyle. But with the Spear, it has a similar playstyle to the Staff, where it's a sort of slowish weapon and it's got some bruiser elements to it, but it also has access to some lifesteal and some stealth, so it has the tools that it needs that Staff was missing to really create a sort of roamer, kind of like tankier playstyle. Now obviously you can play Spear with a more bursty playstyle like a Power Thief build, but I feel like Dagger Pistol and Sword Dagger are just much better at that. And so I think that the Spear is best played for this new unique playstyle, and we're going to be showing the build right now, showing a little bit of the skill combos because the Spear can be a little bit complicated situationally, but in terms of the actual mechanics, it's quite simple. So the build is just full Celestial. Now I know that Celestial is getting nerfed in a few weeks, but it's still going to be very viable because the concentration that it has is not really relevant. This build gets most of its boons from stealing it from the enemy, and so the duration of those boons is really reliant on the enemy's boon duration. And the other boons that you get are just swiftness and fury and vigor. And sure, the swiftness you've got permanently. The fury is not too important. And yes, the vigor duration is pretty important, but we're going to be using food for that anyways. So you don't really need concentration. And the condition duration is pretty useful, but the main condition is poison. And so we're going to make up for that loss of expertise through the Rune of Thorns. So we have still quite a bit of poison duration. And just in general, if your poisons are running their full course, then you're generally doing pretty well in that fight anyways. It's usually when enemies have cleansing that your poison is not going to stick, and then it doesn't really matter that you had that much condition duration anyways. So I feel like condition duration is maybe a little bit overrated, and the nerf to Celestial is being overhyped or overplayed. But anyways, we are using Celestial with Rune of Thorns, Spear with the Sigil of Blight, which gives you poison whenever you crit in melee range in an AoE, and then Sigil of Blood. You can put any other sigil there, but I feel like that one does the most damage over time for this build. Energy Cleansing on a short bow. This is kind of like a normal like defensive weapon that you're going to swap to, but we're mostly going to be on the spear. And then for the relic, I have the relic of the Blight Bringer. This applies poison, cripple, and weakness in an AoE around you whenever you apply poison like 5 times. And we're doing poison quite a bit on this build because of the Sigil of Blight. We've got poison from the stealth access with the venom there. And so we're going to get easy access to this extra weakness and poison and cripple, which is going to give us a lot of synergy with the spear, which we'll see later. The traits I take are Trickery, Shadow Arts, and Daredevil. We just have Daredevil mostly for the utility and mobility. We've got some condition cleanse here, so we don't actually need the Signet of Agility, which allows us to take the Infiltrator Signet to give us more mobility to make up for the somewhat slower spear mechanics. We've got Havoc Specialist here, even though we don't really do mainly power damage, we still do a decent amount of it. And then Dash is just going to give us the best mobility out there to allow us to stick to our target and to just be able to disengage and do all the thief stuff. Now in Trickery, we have the basic Steel synergy traits. We've got the Daze on Steel, the Boon Steel on Steel, and then just some Fury whenever we steal, not too important. But this is a build that relies on boon removal. This is actually the highest boon removing build in the game right now, and we'll show that the reason why that is in a bit. But we've got Rending Shane here, and this is going to give us 2 boon steal whenever we use our sneak attack, and then we're going to get Leeching Venoms whenever we go in stealth, and then we get some extra cleansing whenever we go in stealth. So let's go over why this build is such a boon hating build. Essentially, the spear mechanics are that you have your 2 and your 3 skill, which are a chain of 3 attacks. So the 2 skill is going to do cripple and bleeding. And then the second one, which will appear whenever you use the elite attack, both your 2 and 3 change at the same time. So you can do elite attack on one and then do the follow-up on the next one. But the 2 skill sort of synergizes with itself because the cripple from the first one allows you to get immobilize on the second one, because if the target is crippled, then you get an immobilize. But remember, we've got the Relic of the Blightbringer, which is going to give us the cripple whenever we poison enemies enough. And so we can sometimes get the immobilize just from that relic. And then we've got the Falling Spider, which will just do a bunch of conditions to the target, and will do a little bit more condition and a little bit more power damage to the target when it hits an immobilized enemy. So this is just pure damage, and most of the time we're not going to do this because this is just like sheer burst. And unless you're in a situation where you can just burst enemies without getting attacked back, you're going to need some sustain. So you've got the burst is on the 2, and you've got the sustain is on the 3. But the sustain on the 3 is usually better because you can't see it, but the first attack is just going to give you a leap. So it does this leap animation, and you can get locked in that animation. The 2 skill is just a thrust forward, but the 3 is, we'll see it in a sec when it resets. So you've got couple seconds to follow up with that combo, and then it'll reset to the lead attack. So the lead attack is going to, unless you lag, it's not going to move you anywhere, but it'll leap you forward. And then that's pretty nice for mobility. One thing that you have to get used to is de-targeting with this build, because if you're in melee range of your target, if I go over here to the golem, if I'm already in melee range of the target and I use that leap, it's just going to sit me basically in that location, and I'm going to basically not be able to dodge anything because it's an animation lock, which is not good. So you want to be oftentimes de-targeting and using the 3 skill to move around, and then going back in and then finishing that combo chain, or porting back in with your steal. So we'll go over some of the combos in a bit, but essentially the 3 chain has that as the first attack. So we're using that very often to get the mobility, using de-targeting to move around and get some distance. And then the second one is Vampiric Slash. This will weaken the target and will steal life from them. Now, if the enemy has vulnerability on them, it will do the life siphon, right? So if they don't have vulnerability, then you don't get that. So it's really important that you hit them with the vulnerability attack, but we do get vulnerability from other skills like the Falling Spider. We can also get vulnerability from the Ashen Assault, which is our sneak attack. And so we life siphon whenever we hit with the Vampiric Slash, which is the second part of the 3 skill, and we will apply weakness. Now weakness is important because on the final hit of the 3 skill, it will do a lot of things. So this skill is extremely bloated. So it's an evade. So on that final hit of the 3 skill, there's an evade frame here on that skill. It's not the entire animation, it's kind of like half of it, so you have to really time that well. And then it's also unblockable. You can't see that because the skill facts are just way too long, but it's unblockable. It's an evade, and it gives you stealth if it hits, and it will remove boons if it hits. Now if they're weakened, it will remove an extra boon. So we're going to be spamming this combo very often. We're going to be using the 3 skill, and then we're going to, that's going to remove boons. So we remove boons from the 3 skill. Then we use the sneak attack, and due to the Rending Shade trait, that's going to steal 2 boons. So we remove 2, and then we steal 2. So that's 4 boons right there. And then we can steal to the target as well, which is another 2 boons that we steal. And if they have no boons on them, then it's a fear. And this works out pretty well with the condition duration, but we're losing that. So it's only going to be a 1-second fear, but this works still very well with the Ashen Assault, because the Ashen Assault, which is the sneak attack, so we're going to go into stealth, use the sneak attack, and you can see the animation here is like a multi-hitting attack, and then it does a final thrust. The multi-hitting attack just gives vulnerability at the start, which is not bad, and then the final hit at the end will refund you 3 initiative, and it will give you poison and bleeding. So this is very powerful to hit that final strike. You want to land that. But what's really important about this sneak attack is that it's a long attack. It's not like the dagger backstab where if they miss that 1 frame, then you miss the entire ability, and that means you can't get any of the synergy from your Shadow Arts traits. But with Ashen Assault, in a lot of cases, enemies will see you go into stealth and they'll dodge, but then the end of the attack still hits them, because after their dodge ends, then they still get hit, because it's a kind of like the frame or the animation lasts a certain amount of time. And so it makes it really easy to trigger the constant boon stealing, the venoms, the life steal, and you're also going to get some cleansing by entering and exiting stealth. So landing your 3 skill, the final hit there, is really important, because you get so much value and so much reliable boon steal from just constantly using that Ashen Assault. And that's pretty much the bread and butter. Now, if you do miss the Ashen Assault, or rather the 3rd hit here, which is the Shattering Assault, if you miss that, you don't get stealth. Now we can make up for that, right? Like, we could go back into the combo, right? But we're a little bit vulnerable then, because we've got to go through our entire chain again. And this is why the power version is not so good compared to the Sword Dagger version, because Sword Dagger, all it has to do is just cloak and dagger, so you can just recast it. But this, we have to do our combo again. Now, we can make up for this by using the 5 skill. So the 5 skill is a block, which will heal us. It only does 1 block, so it's like an Aegis that's channeled. But if we use a finisher attack, which is the 3rd chain of any of the 2 or 3 skills, it will be a 3 channel block. So you can see here, I've got 3 blocks. And that will heal us for 1.6k 3 times, so a lot of sustain. And that kind of makes up for the vulnerability of missing your stealth. So often we're going to be doing something like the 3 chain here, and if it hits, we Ash and Assault. But we do not gain the 3 block because we didn't just use a leap attack, or a finisher attack, we just used a sneak attack. So sneak attacks count as part of your combo. It will basically make it so that you cannot get the triple Shadow Veil. But this is still a very good skill most of the time because it's just a block that you can choose at any time. Like if the enemy is using Rampage on you, like a Rampage warrior, all you have to do to survive is just keep spamming the block, and so you can choose when to be aggressive and when to be defensive, which is extremely good utility. So this is why the Shadow Veil is a very strong, and the spear weapon in general is a very strong kind of like bruiser weapon because you have so much sustain when you need it. Now the 4 skill is a little bit weird, but it's a projectile, and it will daze the target if they already have cripple on them, but it also cripples the target. So I will shoot it twice to get the daze, or because we have the Relic of the Blightbringer, which will cripple the target, we can get the daze by just throwing 1, right? So we get vulnerability and cripple and poison from the Blightbringer relic, and we get synergy from cripple on the 4 skill because it'll daze. We get synergy from the 3 skill because it'll give extra boon rip from the weakness. So that's kind of why the Blightbringer relic is so good. So the 4 skill is range, and by the way, the auto attack is a little, I don't know why it does this, but you can use it from behind. So you can just be kiting people and just throw your spear from behind, which is extremely powerful and not very interactive because you get the full mobility of your character while still pressuring them with the spear auto attack. So yeah, that's pretty nice. And obviously the spear auto attack is like most spears. It has the dynamic melee or range attack depending on your range of the target. So in melee, it's a pretty fast bleed attack. And that'll also give poison because of the Blightbringer relic, or the Blight relic. So that's kind of like the main idea of the spear here. But what are the main combos that we want to do? So because we can swap things up here, and the 4 skill also allows us to skip our lead attack. So if we do a finisher and then we use the 4 skill, it's going to give us an extra damage boost, and it's going to skip the lead attack. So it can kind of like serve as a lead attack, but generally we don't want to do that because, as I said, a sneak attack counts as part of your combo, and so therefore the distracting throw is not going to skip your lead attack. But there are some combos that we can do, right? So the 2 skill we know synergizes with cripple as well. So what we can do is we can do the 4 skill to cripple from range, and then use the 3 skill to get in melee range, then 2 to immobilize them, and then from there we can either go for extra poison and bleeding, or we can use the stealth ability. So we can either use the finisher from the 2 or the 3, depending on what you want. But the immobilize there from the 2 is really nice because it ensures that we get that finisher off. And because the finisher is so important to get that Ash and Assault off, we want to usually use it on an immobilized enemy. But not always can you reliably land the 2 skill from that, right? Because you got to set that up too. So a lot of times I'll just go for the steal or the infiltrator signet on my shattering assault. So I'll precast my 3 chain, and then I'll use the 3 and then just steal in, and I can immediately Ash and Assault them. So the main combo is just 3, 3, and then port in during your last 3, and then sneak attack them. And that's gonna be what you use most of the time, which is very simple because it's just pressing 3 and then pressing 1 with the sneak attack. But as I showed earlier, you can do the 4, 3, 2, 3 combo into 1, which is also better burst, but it's a little bit more reliant on you landing the entire combo, whereas this combo, you don't need to land every piece of the combo, so it's a little bit more reliable. And so the 3-3-3 combo is generally what you're going to do, and the 4-3-2-3 combo is going to be a little bit more aggressive burst, but more situational, depending on, you know, if you know that they don't have dodges or something like that. And so, yeah, those are the kind of like the two main combos you want to do. You can just spam the 2 as well, and that'll do sheer damage. Like if the target is downed in the down state, and they're not going to dodge or move at all, then you know that you can get max damage on them. Then you can just spam the 2 to get as much cleave as possible. But if they're in the down state, you can also get the value from the fear, right? Because if they're down, they lose all their boons, and therefore you get rending shade value from fearing because they don't have any boons. And so you can fear the enemies who are trying to res because you're going to get that fear. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do with the spear, and it's mostly just situational, whereas mechanically, as I said, it's not that hard. It's situational, which is kind of like, that's Thief playstyle in a nutshell, right? So this is a pretty nice playstyle for Thief. I like it. It works pretty well, and it's going to work very well after the Celestial nerf still. But if you guys like this content, as usual, please like the video, subscribe, check out the other builds on guildgen.com. We're updating them all. And so, with that being said, I'll see you all next time.